All right, so I expect you to check your answer key. Check your work with my answer key. I'm giving you fair warning. If I did it, however I'm doing these problems, that's what I expect to see on your test. So you should be able to, there's three forms. This is in point slope form, this one is in standard form, and this one is in slope intercept form. You should be able to graph all three of those forms. This is on the test. It absolutely is on the test. And this FR means it's free response. That means this is not going to be a multiple choice question. You're going to have to, it looks exactly like your review did. I'm going to give you the equation and you are going to have to graph it. So when it's in point slope form, graphing it involves knowing how to get the point from this equation. This point right here is the point -2. I change the sign, -2 and +1. So from the origin, I go to -2, +1, and I plot that point. And then from that point, I use my slope, and my slope right here is -1. I use my slope. I've written it as a 1/1 down here because the number on top is rise, the number on bottom is run. So from that -2, 1 that I got from the equation, I'm then going to rise 1, run 1. Now it has to rise 1, go to the left 1 because my slope is negative. And I just keep doing it. Rise 1, run 1, rise 1, run 1, rise 1, run 1. I can go back the other direction, start right here and go down 1, go to the right 1. Down 1 to the right 1. Just remember that, remember slope face. Negative slopes are going to be going up to the left. So I can look at this and instantly tell you that my line is going to be going up to the left by looking at that negative sign. So graph your point, use your slope to continue your line. When it's in standard form, you should be getting your X and Y intercepts. It should be as easy as cover up the X term. Cover up the X term, and if you cover up the X term, you're left with -y equals -6. Divide both sides by -1, you get y equals 6. That means that you're going to cross your y-axis at 6. So I go to +6 on my y-axis and I put a dot. Do the same thing, cover up that -y, and you're left with an equation that says 2x equals -6. Divide both sides by 2 and you get x equals -3. That means it's crossing the x-axis at -3. Connect those two dots and you have your line. Slope-intercept form, it doesn't matter that it's an inequality. Slope-intercept form, you graph your y-intercept, which is the b, the number that's not in front of the x. And it says my y-intercept is at -6, so I'm going to go down to -6, and then I'm going to do my rise and my run. If it's not a fraction, make it a fraction so that you can rise the number on top and run the number on bottom. From -6, I'm going to rise 3, run 1. Rise 3, run 1. Now, the inequality should be the indicator that tells you that this is going to have shading because graphing the line is just a boundary line. All of the points on one side of the line or the other are going to be shaded and going to be in the solution set. Because there is a bar underneath that inequality, we're going to have a solid line, and because it is less than, we shade below the line. So I'm shading below the line. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because, again, this is exactly the same thing. You've got a point and a slope. You've got X and Y intercepts, and you've got a Y intercept and a slope. You should be able to do those the same way. This should be what I see, though, when I look at your paper. I need to see the work. I need to see that you plotted that point, the point 5, -4. I need to see that point 5, -4 right there. I should see that point on your line, and then I should see where you did rise 1, run 2. At least once, rise 1, run 2. Down here on this section, you had to write the equation. What do you need in order to write the equation? I need a point and a slope. That's the easiest way. It says write it in slope-intercept form, so that's why I need the y-intercept, and then I need to just do rise over run to get my slope. The y-intercept is -3. I did rise 1, run 4 to get to my next point, so it's rise 1, run 4x. Negative slope, be careful and don't miss the negative sign. Be sure you put the negative sign in front of the slope. For shading purposes, if it's shading above the line, it's going to be greater than. If it's shading below the line, it's going to be less than. The solid line gets the bar. The dotted line does not have a bar. Write each of the given equations in slope-intercept form. You've got to distribute and then solve for y. Distribute means multiply. -3 times 1, -3. -3 times 2 is -6. Then I've got to move this one by doing the opposite. This says +1. This says y -1. The opposite of -1 is +1. What you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other side of the equal sign. Why did I line it up underneath the 6? Because these are like terms. This term right here has an x, so I can't combine that with a term that does not have an x. So I lined up the like terms. Then I combine like terms. The signs are different, so I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of the larger. 6 is bigger than 1, so 6 is negative, so my answer is going to be negative. 6 minus 1 is 5. And then I just brought the 3x down. Now it's in slope-intercept form. If it's in standard form, just move the x and then divide by the number in front of the y. So do the opposite to move the x. -2 to both sides. I did line them up, but they're not like terms, so I didn't actually subtract them. Some of you are going to put a -6 and a -2 together and get -8. You cannot do that. These are not like terms. So I just put the x in front because of y equals mx plus b. And then I divided by the coefficient of the y, and the coefficient of the y is a -1. We don't see the 1 there. It's that ninja 1. We know it's there even though we don't see it. And then a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. 2 more of the same kind. Write it in standard form. I can tell you right now, this is a bonus question. Well, this one may not be a bonus question, but you do have a bonus question that involves fractions on your test. So be sure you just move the x, and then if the x ends up being negative, you do have to get rid of the negative, and you also have to get rid of the fraction. How do you get rid of a negative? Multiply by -1. How do you get rid of a negative fraction? Multiply by a negative and by whatever number the denominator is. My denominator right here is 3, so I'm going to multiply by -3. The negative will get rid of this negative. The 3 will get rid of that 3. Just be sure to distribute it to all 3 terms. This ends up being a +2, this ends up being a -3y, and this ends up being -3. Describing the transformations. You've got to figure out what your A, H, and K are, and then memorize what it means. A is either a stretch or a shrink. If it's a stretch, if it's a number bigger than 1. If A is negative, then you're going to have a reflection. H moves it left and right. K moves it up and down. So be sure to remember to change the sign of H. That's going to be the number one thing that everybody forgets. I rewrote this. I see a +1 right there. What that means I had was an X minus a -1. That's why H is a -1, because the formula says minus. So H is negative, so it went left. K is negative, so it went down. Be sure you check all of these. And this is the opposite of that. I give you the values of A, H, and K by the description of the transformations. You need to write down what that tells you, A, H, and K, and then plug it in. This question right here, people are going to miss. Oh, by the way, I'm telling you right here that on the test, these questions right here are multiple choice, and so is this question right here. It's a multiple choice. What about these up here? This is also a multiple choice. I'm going to give you a standard form and I'm going to say which of the following is the standard form of this equation. So it's not quite as hard, I think, as a free response. So these will all be multiple choice questions on the test. This question is a free response. I'm going to stop this and move to another video.